set up this business, and it was just Jim and I. So the two of us, I was out on a ladder pruning apple trees.
Okay.
And then Jim hired a crew, and, we bought some equipment and started the business.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 88 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the president of the Camano Chamber of Commerce as well as an arborist at Puget Sound Tree Care. Please welcome Susan Fay. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Today I got to speak with the president of the Camano Chamber of Commerce, at least president as of right now, Susan Fay, who is also an arborist at Puget Sound Tree Care with her husband. And so anyways, she took over the president position at the Camano Chamber about a year ago now, right in the smack middle of COVID. Like right as COVID is starting to kick off, that's when she takes over. And so the previous president, Jim Ayers, he was back on the podcast. I forget what episode, but you can go back and search it. But we got to talk with him and kind of his background. And not thankfully, but when he was the president, he was kind of in peace times of things were generally going pretty well and smoothly. And so that happened. And then as COVID is hitting, Jim Ayers and his wife, Lynn, who was also on the podcast, both of them, they moved together. They moved to California during this time. And so Susan was kind of thrown into all of this, from just being the vice president to suddenly being the president, and then everything is happening with COVID. So really got thrown into the driver's seat of everything that was going on in the world during that time period, as well as trying to run a business as on the side, with her husband during COVID. So much going on. And she handled it so well, and the Camano Chamber has done so much for the small businesses in this community. You'll hear more about what happened, how they worked through all this. But, just big props to both Susan and Jessica McCready, who both did so much for this community during that time period. I just can't say enough good things about them. They both have done amazing things. So, without further ado, I will just let the conversation speak for itself. Here's my conversation with Susan Fay. Hey, Yale Anderson. Welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the president of the Camano Island Chamber of Commerce and an arborist at Puget Sound Tree Care. Welcome to the podcast, Susan Fay.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Susan.
Well, I've lived on Camano Island for about 10 years.
Okay.
And we've owned a place up here for over 30. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington. Basically, it was more like Redmond, Washington, because we were kind of on the border between Bellevue and Redmond.
Okay.
And that's where I've lived there since 1965, so that was a long time.
Okay.
And then we lived there for 25 years, raised a family, ran our business, and then moved up here.
Okay. Nice. So growing up there in Bellevue or Redmond, Bellevue area, how was high school and everything? What was kind of your interest and stuff during then?
High school was good. I went to Redmond High School, and I think my last 2 years of Redmond High School, I was supposed to be going to Interlake High School because they changed the boundaries. But
okay.
Yeah, it happened, and I ended up finishing up at Redmond High School.
Nice.
Yeah, that's all your friends were and everything.
Right.
So,
yeah, that'd be hard to switch kind of that partway through.
Yeah. So I wasn't, real involved in anything to do with school, other than, honor society and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I worked a lot during high school.
Okay.
Yep. And I ended up graduating early because I was ready to move on and start my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So did that involve jumping into college, or were you looking at more career stuff?
No, actually, I I worked the whole time during my 3 years in high school in a dental office.
Okay.
And so my goal was to go to college and become a dental hygienist. And I was accepted at University of San Francisco. That's
Okay.
where I was slated to go to work, or go to school anyway.
Yeah.
And I met a guy and fell in love when I was a junior in high school, which happened to be the guy that I married.
Nice.
As my business partner. So I left when I graduated from high school. Jim had taken a job in Alaska,
Okay.
and I followed him to Alaska.
Nice. What was he doing up there?
Well, he was working for the Lamonts, which is a chain of stores back then. It was owned by the Pay and Save Corporation.
Okay.
And he was managing their shoe department, which was owned by a separate company. And so they transferred him up there to open up the Fairbanks store, which is a brand new store. And it was kind of at the end of the height of the pipeline, when the pipeline was being built up there. So anyway, he went up to Fairbanks in January, and he was a couple years older than I was, or am. And I followed him up there when I graduated from high school, not to my dad's pleasure, because my dad lived in San Francisco, and he was really looking forward to me going to school and getting my degree. And I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went up to Alaska and had a great experience.
Nice.
Yeah. So Jim ended up managing both the Fairbanks and Anchorage stores, and we were there for about 2.5 years.
Nice. How did you like Alaska? I mean, after living in the city for so long and then moving up there.
Well, it was very different. It's kind of like, I think they called it the last frontier, and it was a young person's state, and I think the average age was like 35 or 40 at the times.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of young people and a lot of adventure, and we would do things like, the sun would be up until midnight, and we'd get off work and grab our fishing poles and go fishing in the rivers at 11 o'clock at night. And it was still daylight.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
It is. It was kind of an exciting time. It's we met a lot of nice people. There's a lot of young people that we did things with, and they're still friends to this day. I mean, we all kind of were up there for an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So did you guys get married while you were up there?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Nope, we didn't get married until a couple years later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then when you were up there then, did you get to go and explore a lot of the hikes and all sorts of stuff they have up there?
Oh, yeah, a lot. I mean, that's what we used to spend our weekends doing, just taking off into the wilderness and checking things out. Lots of bear, and the mosquitoes were huge.
Yes.
And mosquitoes like me, so that was kind of a problem.
Yeah.
But we went fishing, and Jim didn't hunt or anything at that time, but it was just sort of an adventure, and we worked a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So were you working at the store as well then?
I actually ended up working at the store. I was taking some classes at the University of Alaska, and then was working in retail. It was part of the same store, but like I said, Jim's department was owned by a separate company.
Okay.
So we did that, and then he got transferred to Anchorage, and we obviously went down there, and I was working at that store, and then we're there for about 8 months. He had to hire some new people, and then we went back to Fairbanks, and that's where we ended up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, when we've we did a cruise ship, so like not really seeing all of Alaska, just kind of seeing little parts of it. But I do remember, like, just from looking outside and stuff like that, it almost seems like larger than life, everything up there. Like, everything's bigger. Like, the mountains, the trees, like, everything just feels bigger.
Well, there's bigger and more space.
Yeah.
Just there wasn't a lot of cars. And people did kind of keep to themselves, though. Mm-hmm. And Jim had a great aunt that had homesteaded up in Eagle River, so we used to spend some weekends with her, which was really fun. She was actually a teacher in the Anchorage school system. And we used to go up to her house and on the weekends and play Yahtzee and drink beer. And she had like 13 cats, kind of one of those eccentric ladies. But it was kind of had a little bit of family there, so that was nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you get to go back there and visit very often? Or have you been?
I've been back for work, and Jim goes back every year. He goes and fishes.
Okay.
He fishes up in out of Sitco. His dad and his brother, they have kind of an annual trip that they go fishing to.
Okay.
So, but I've only been back, let's see, maybe 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But that was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yes. All right. So then once you guys moved back, where did you land when you came back?
Well, it was interesting. I didn't realize this, but at the time, Jim had sort of decided that this isn't what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. And his father owned a logging business, and he decided that that's what he was going to do. He was going to move back to Seattle and join his dad in his business.
Mm-hmm.
And they were basically timber cutters. So what they do is there's a logging company that contracts out cutters, and
Okay.
Jim's dad's company was they were just cutting contractors. So we moved back to Seattle, and we bought a house in Kirkland,
Okay.
and got married. And he's a 4th-generation logger. So his father was a
Okay.
logger, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's pictures of his family in the Marymore Museum down in Redmond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very
And
cool.
also, I think on the walls, have some prints of pictures on the walls in Safeway in Redmond, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So a lot of history there.
Yeah. Very cool. So then he comes back, joins up with his dad's business then.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys doing then during that time then?
Well, he was working for his dad, and I was trying to decide what to do. So I was taking classes at the community college in accounting and some other things, travel agent school, and I went to work for a travel agency, Doug Fox Travel.
Okay.
And I started doing accounting, and then was hired by a subsidiary of Doug Fox doing, it was called S Incorporated, and they were doing small trips, kind of a wholesale division to Victoria and to San Francisco at the time.
Okay.
So they hired me to kind of oversee that, and I would take groups down to San Francisco 2 weekends a month, and then we had, I think it was called the Princess Marguerite, was sailing out of Seattle during the summer times.
Okay.
And so we had like 2-night, 3-day packages.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. We put together these packages, and then we had a reservation staff that took the reservations from the travel agents,
Mm-hmm.
and then basically sent the people on their trip.
Yeah.
So I did that for Us Incorporated for probably 3 or 4 years, and then they decided to start another department within that called Active Travel.
Okay.
And so another guy and I set that up, and what we did is we put together active travel trips.
Okay.
And there were things like hot air ballooning in the Woodinville Valley,
Okay.
ski trips to Whistler, ski trips to Alberta, horseback packing trips in Alberta, salmon fishing in Alaska. So it was a lot of river rafting trips. We had
Yeah.
like 3 different river rafting trips.
Okay.
And it was fun. We sold them independently, but we also sold them wholesale to other agents.
Okay.
And so my job, we had a reservation staff of about 8, so I kind of oversaw our reservation staff. But I was also involved in meeting with the tour operators and the hotels, the airlines, the people to kind of negotiate deals on how to put together our packages. So
Yeah.
for rooms and buses and ski tickets and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting job.
Yeah.
I had to travel quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, and that would be when was this time period?
This was back in the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was like the travel agencies and stuff like that. Like the job was so much harder in some ways because you couldn't just be like, well, I'm going to Google like what's the best river raft trip. Like you couldn't just jump on the internet.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So we were the resource for all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So did you have to go and try different things?
Oh,
when
yeah.
new companies.
Yep, I tried everything many times, and then we used to have these things called familiarization trips, where we used to take groups of travel agents on these different trips. So like I remember taking, there's probably 40 travel agents on a river rafting trip on the Fraser River up in Canada.
Okay.
And it was 2 nights and 3 days, and we had these women and men show up with big suitcases, and we were on rubber rafts. So we had to take all their clothes out of the suitcases and stick them into plastic bags, and then it was a great adventure. I mean, huge water, and then we'd pull off at the end of the day and set up tents and cook over a campfire, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean that was one of the trips, and then another trip that was really interesting was we had these fishing trips up in the Kenai Peninsula for to fish for king salmon.
Yeah.
And we had I guess it was the executives from, I think it was Delta Airlines. They decided that their executives wanted to go on this trip. So it was like 4 of the big guys, the president, CEO, a few others from Delta. So they flew into Seattle, and I was the one that met them and then took them up. We flew up to Alaska and then kind of took care of them, got them on boats, got them all, situated.
Yeah.
But when I met them at the airport, at the time I was 6 months pregnant with my first child.
Okay.
And they were not happy. Here there's this is back in the 80s. And, here these guys are going on, kind of good old boys going on this trip. And all of a sudden this young woman shows up in a dress and pregnant. And anyway, it ended up being an amazing trip. At the time, we also took a film crew from Como for it's their evening. It's kind of like an evening magazine thing. So we had them with us also. And, the guides on the trip were very nervous about me trying to catch fish being pregnant. And I was like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And I ended up catching the biggest salmon.
Nice.
Yeah. So I got it on. It was on television, and it showed on television when we got back. But the end of the story is when we got back, we were in the airplane, and the guys had all kind of taken me under their wing, and they all wrote my husband notes on actually I think it was some kind of bag, like a bag that people
Yeah.
Whatever, a bag in the airplane.
Emergency plane.
Yeah, emergency. Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
yeah.
they wrote these notes to Jim about what a good trooper I was and how much they enjoyed the trip, and it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess growing up then through everything was like adventure and kind of that rugged stuff. Was that something you had always been like you enjoyed backpacking and all these more high adventure things?
No, not really. I mean, as a kid, I was the youngest of 3. I had 2 older brothers. No, I don't think so. We camped, as a family. That's kind of what you did back then. And, not really. It was just something that I was interested in.
Okay.
I was interested in gardening also at the same time. My mother was an avid gardener, so I was always, from the time I was a little girl, I was kind of with her in the yard doing gardening. But no, I mean, and Jim and I, we did a lot of that kind of stuff once we were older in Alaska. We came back, we did a little bit. In fact, that's how we found Camano Island.
Okay.
Is we came up here and camped and decided that this is someplace we wanted to live.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so you were working at the travel agency. Did you work there? Did you continue to work there after you had your kiddos, or?
No, actually, after I had our first child, I left and went to we had an advertising department. It was part of our travel company.
Okay.
And one of the women that worked there, her husband had started a business in Redmond, and that's where we were building a house out there. So he approached me and said, "Hey, I need somebody to come in and sort of manage my company." It was an exhibit and design firm. So I completely switched courses.
Okay.
I went from, running a small travel company to switching over and doing exhibit and design. So
Okay.
we had 3 designers that designed trade show exhibits for companies like Microsoft and some of the big healthcare companies. And then our guys in the shop would build them. We had about 25 guys that worked in our shop, and they built the exhibits, and then they'd go to the trade shows and set them up. So I did that for him, probably 4 years.
Okay.
And by then my daughter was born. And that was, I worked quite a while there. And Jim was, actively involved in his business. His dad had retired by then. And I ended up deciding not to work anymore.
Okay.
I decided to stay home and spend some time, with my kids. And that lasted about 6 months, I think. When you're used to working and all of a sudden you're at home,
Right.
it was an adjustment trying to decide, what to do.
Yep.
I can remember going to my son's kindergarten, like Halloween party. I'd leave from work and go up there for an hour during my lunch hour. And my friends laugh about this, but I had, there was one of the women there, one of the moms, had made this caterpillar out of cupcakes. And it was just a most amazing thing. All these cupcakes with licorice coming out of the sides. It was very cute. And I thought, I was completely intimidated by it. I mean, these moms were like over the top, did all these wonderful things, and I thought, this is not something I could ever do. And the woman that did that ended up being one of my best friends, and she still is.
Okay.
So, 40-some years later. But I got more involved in school, volunteering, helping kids. I did a little bit of part-time teacher's aide work.
Okay.
I just wanted to be home when my kids got home from school and help them with their homework at night. And I was working like 50 hours a week before. So it was a lot.
Yes.
A lot when you're raising a family.
Right.
So anyway, I did that for about, stayed unemployed for about 6 months and then decided that I needed to do something else. And I liked to cook.
Okay.
And ended up starting my own catering business.
Okay.
Because I figured that way I could maybe do the work in the evenings and on weekends, and that way Jim was home with the kids.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a win-win situation for raising children. But I did that until my kids graduated from high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and then other things came into play. I mean, I also, I did the catering, and it developed into an event planning business.
Okay.
I volunteered for a nonprofit organization called ALE, Assistance League of the East Side.
Okay.
And I was real involved with that. I planned a huge event that they had. It was 400 people for a luncheon that took about 8 to 10 months of planning. It was to raise money for Assistance League.
Okay.
And so that was fun, and I was involved in that for up for probably 15 years.
Yeah.
And then so the event planning business went well, and it was something that I could do on weekends. It could be when I could take my summers off if I didn't want to work summers. But it was basically just I catered parties for like retirement parties and birthday parties and weddings and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So when you were doing how long did you have the catering / event planning business then?
Gosh, probably, like I said, 15 years.
Wow.
But during that time, Jim's aunt, who was doing all the books for the business, retired. So I took over doing all the payroll and accounts receivable and payable for the business.
Okay.
And we had, at that point, probably 25 guys working for us.
Wow. Okay.
And there was no computer.
Right.
No computer to be doing our payroll. I mean, it was all done by hand.
Right.
And so I did that. And then also I went back to school and became a master gardener because I had a passion for gardening. And that was through King County and Washington State University. And volunteered on Saturdays at the public market answering gardening questions. You've probably seen the master gardeners out before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about that, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I've done a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few things.
Yeah, quite a few things.
Nice. So then with the catering and event planning business then, did you have chef background that you were you coming up with the dishes and stuff like that, or?
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was mostly just more of an appetizer kind of thing. That was the easiest for me. And I worked out of my own house.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't have, it was just the way it worked.
Yeah.
Later on, I kind of moved more into the event planning because, with the health department, you couldn't cook out of your house back. They changed the rules.
Yep.
So I did more event planning, and that was kind of, like Christmas parties, buying all the gifts that were given away, and planning the locations, and working with, the facilities, and figuring out all of the particulars of planning an event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then you did all of this until your kids graduated, and your husband at this time was still working with the family business.
Yep.
All through. Okay.
Yep. Still
Cool.
logging. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, what did you do after that? Then, once your kids kind of took
Well,
off.
they took off and went to college, and my mother got sick. So I was, spending quite a bit of time kind of, facilitating their care, and what she was doing and where her and my stepfather were living. And that's what kind of kept me in Redmond.
Okay.
And then when my mother passed away, it was kind of at about the same time. Jim was kind of seeing the writing on the wall that the logging business was changing.
Okay.
And that the contract that he had was probably going to be smaller and smaller as the years went by because, cutting down trees in forests was not something that, they were doing as much anymore.
Right.
So we both kind of talked about it, and we decided that, maybe we needed to, we still both had a passion for trees and gardening, and we went back to school and became arborists.
Okay.
And decided to start our own business as a tree service.
Yeah.
And Jim took a partner. His cousin was his partner,
Okay.
and we did that for a couple years. And then my mother passed away.
Okay.
And when she passed away, we decided, there really isn't anything holding us here. We've lived here for 25 years, raised a family, have a community.
Yeah.
But we had a place on Camano, and that's where we wanted to go.
Okay.
So we sold everything, packed up, and moved to Camano Island.
Okay.
And started our business. He and his cousin went separate ways. His cousin kept the business down there, and we started a new business up here.
Got it.
So.
Okay.
And
cool.
that was 11 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was when Puget Sound Tree Care. That's when that got started. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So the property that you had held on to for so long, then was that raw land, or did you guys already have something there?
Well, let's see. We had a couple different pieces of property on the island, but the one where we keep our equipment is right up here off East Camano, and that's where our sign is.
Yeah.
That's where we kind of run our business out of. I mean, the day-to-day business part is done out of our house.
Okay.
It's an office in our house, but it's 13 acres, and it used to be an old Boy Scout camp.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, back in the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
So there's a bunch of old, they're not there anymore, but there was a bunch of cabins up there, and it's a beautiful piece of property.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we set up shop. And when we first came up, and we rented a house, because we had a cabin on the west side of the island, but it was only like 420 square feet. It was built in the 30s.
Yeah.
Great place to spend the summer with your
Yeah.
kids and stuff, but not to live in. So we rented a house in Camelot, actually, and our goal was to maybe buy a house, fix it up, sell it, buy a house, fix it up, and sell it. We just thought that would be something interesting to do.
Yeah.
And we finally thought, we own this place, we're paying taxes on it, and water share.
Yep.
Why don't we just tear it down and build a house? So that's what we eventually did do.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we set up this business, and it was just Jim and I. So the two of us, were out. I was out on a ladder pruning apple trees.
Okay.
And, and then Jim hired a crew, and, we bought some equipment and started the business.
Nice.
And then I sort of segued off into something else, which kind of is my tendency here. And so I, because I was a master gardener and I had a horticulture background and an arborist, there wasn't any place for me to garden. We had acreage in Redmond, and I had huge gardens and
Okay.
all kinds of things. And so I started a potting business.
Okay.
So basically, I had enough customers that they would say, "Gosh, your pots look beautiful. Can you do mine?" So I started a business where I actually went out to people's homes, designed their pots, bought the plants, filled their pots, and then came back in the fall, put their fall plants in.
Okay.
And it was all over. I had customers in Madison Park and Kirkland, Redmond, downtown Seattle. And then I started developing a clientele up here on the island. So I had
Okay.
about a dozen clients here on the island.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny that when we were building our house, we were renting a place down the street, and the driveway looked like a nursery. It was
Okay.
filled. The wholesaler would come in and unload his truck with all of the plants that I had selected for all of my customers.
Yeah.
And the neighbors were just like, "What's going on here?" It was it was fun.
Yeah.
And it was sort of my I tried to take something that I was passionate about, kind of like what I did with cooking and catering.
Yeah.
And then put them into pots.
Yeah.
So I just stopped doing that. I still do it for a few people,
Yep.
but I stopped doing that about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something I'm a little curious about when it comes to like becoming an arborist and stuff, what type of I think like a lot of people have an idea of trees because obviously we're surrounded by them and they see them every day, but like what more specifically do you learn about and what are the important things that you guys find out about trees when you're going through that?
Well, it's interesting. The course that they put you through is through the ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture, and you cover everything from soils to pathogens to tree identity, climbing trees, how to fall trees, how to cut them and prune them properly. It's a really good program. And then, you get certified. You have to take a big test at the end. You can become certified. And then you have to take continuing education in order to stay certified.
Okay.
And so, in fact, my certification is up. I think both of ours is up in June. So we have to take CEUs, continuing education units. And then Jim also became a risk assessor. So he can go out and the city, like the city of Everett, would call him and say, "Hey, look, we've got this dangerous tree. Can you come out and give us a report on what we need to do with it?"
Yeah.
And so I ended up being more of the person in the office writing the reports.
Yep.
Jim would go out in the field. So a lot of times I went out in the field with him too, and just determining what needed to be done, and then the reports would be written up. And then, did I answer your question about the arborist? Okay. And so one of the other things that is part of my job is I do all the permitting. So if there's a county, city, the Forest Service, I work with them in writing up all their permits because there's a lot of areas that require a permit to cut a tree down.
Yeah.
And even Island County has become very specific about where you can cut trees, where you can't cut them. It might have to do with slope, it might have to do with erosion, eagle nests,
Right.
all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my specialty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then, so you guys had started this. You were doing the side business on the side of your main business and everything else. Then, how did you get involved with the Camano Chamber then?
When we moved up here, we left our community, and it was like that's where all your friends were. You met all your friends through your kids, through sports and those kind of things, and through all the volunteering that I did. But I just decided that I needed to figure out a way to get myself involved in the community, meet some friends. So I joined the chamber, and I also joined the ladies golf league at Camelot.
Okay.
Because we like to golf. But it was also it was interesting because I got to meet people on the golf course. But I joined the chamber, and it was a little intimidating at first because of course I didn't know anyone. I'd never been involved in a chamber of commerce. But it was really it was interesting, and the more that I got involved in the community, the more that it sort of segued into a good place for us to be at.
Yeah.
And it's great people. I've made a lot of good friends. It's been a great support for our business. I don't know. That's how it ended up. I was basically a member for about 5 years, and then I got involved in on the board.
Okay.
So I've been involved in the boards for about the last 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So you joined basically as soon as you guys moved up here then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just needed to know what was the feel of the business community here.
Right.
And we were going to be involved in it. And, this is a small island, and it's a small community. And, we wanted to, get our name out there, meet people, and let them know what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So then, so you've been on, you were part of the board member, or the chamber board then. And then how did everything kind of happen with like becoming the president of the Camano Chamber then?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So I became the vice president when Jim Ayers was the president.
Okay.
Yeah. And, we he's a great guy. We had a great working relationship and had a lot of fun. And he kept saying, Susan, I'm only going to do this for 2 years, and then you're going to take over. And so at about 2 years, he said, are you ready to take over? I said, no, not yet. I'm kind of finishing up a few things. I want to tie these things up, these loose ends, before I can decide to stay with what I'm doing, to give my efforts to the, to that position.
Yeah.
So that was fine until about April of 2020. And he called me up and said, well, are you ready to be president? And I said, well, I thought we were waiting till December. And he said, well, I just sold my house. We're moving to California, and I want you to step in. And I just said, okay, I think I can do it. So he left, and as of like April 15th, I became the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember this I didn't know all the details, but I just was talking with someone at Windermere, or maybe even Coastal, because they share that building, and they were like, yeah, Jim Ayers is gone. And I was like, wait, like not, like where is he at? And they're like, no, like he's moved. And I was like, what? We just talked with them like in December, and they were like, yeah, so we're going to do this, and we plan on doing this, like in the community. And it was so fast that they like turned around and sold their house. And
it was so fast. And in fact, I think he was showing somebody houses, and the house that they were really looking for was like his house. And he just said, well, I should just show you my house. You might be interested in it. We're thinking about selling in about a year. Well, they sold it.
Yeah.
And they have grandkids down there.
Yes.
And they were ready to, to start a different part of their life,
yeah,
different chapter.
Yeah.
But it was a really trying time to step in as president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, right as COVID's really hitting peak everything.
Yeah.
You're stepping in. So what was that like?
It was huge. Thank goodness for Jessica, because she was sort of my guiding light. But we ended up getting the CARES funding from Island County, which they received $1 million, which Camano Island received a third of that. Which so we had $333,000 to distribute to businesses on Camano Island.
Right.
We don't have city government.
Right.
Everybody else has a city government.
Yep.
So the Camano Island Chamber of Commerce became the city government. So we had to figure out how to put together a questionnaire for businesses to fill out.
Yep. Get
that out to the businesses, how to advertise it, and then go through a selection process. We had a group of people that was kind of a little board that sort of watched over the decision making on who gets the money and who doesn't, and how they qualify. But it was tough because it was during COVID.
Yeah.
And you couldn't meet.
Yep.
You couldn't talk to people. Everything was done via Zoom.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge.
Yeah.
And of course, I had my grandkids there for the summer, and I was up. I just, went down to the office and started working at 2 a.m. going through all of these questionnaires, because I had this window from 2 to 6 in the morning to try and get this stuff done, because I had a house full of people and a business to run. Oh. So anyway, it was challenging, but really gratifying.
Yeah.
Being able to see that there were so many people in need, and that we were able to help support these businesses that are part of our community. Right. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and just thank you from our business, and just I know so many other businesses that were helped through that, and how quickly the Chamber of Commerce was able to get information out, process stuff, get through things, as things were changing on a daily or hourly basis of like, okay, so this can happen, but this can't happen. Like, everything was so chaotic, and I just felt like the Chamber did a really good job in communicating with the island and the businesses that were part of the Chamber. And it was just, there was so much good information that you guys were kicking out that was super helpful.
Thanks. It was a good effort, and a lot of people were involved in it. I just can't say enough how important it was for us to help these businesses out, because everybody was struggling, and to see our restaurants all of a sudden not open, and our nail salons and our gyms, and it really affected a lot of people.
Yeah. So then how you guys were getting through the CARES Act and that stuff. Then how did it kind of continue on as we went through the rest of that year?
Well, we just tried to connect with our local businesses and mostly through our membership, because we worked really hard on making sure that our members were heard and listened to, and sending out information that could be helpful for them, like the Here For You that we set up. Is that what it is? Yeah. And we tried to do some fundraising locally for, like with the prom in a bag for our high school seniors.
Yeah. Yep.
And which was a great success. I'm trying to think. It just seemed like, I think it was more just a communication thing, just trying to stay in touch and make sure that people we filled their needs. Like for instance, trying to get gift cards and raising the money for that for the restaurants. That was really helpful. And then because we couldn't do chili chowder, we tried to come up with another plan, and we brought in the restaurants and said, hey, on this weekend, sell chili or chowder, and we'll direct people your way through advertising and social media. Yeah. And that seemed to help too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I just think it's been like everything has had to change and evolve, and I feel like, especially now as we enter into 2021 and we're getting going and looking at events, stuff like that, it's like trying to figure out, we're still obviously in the midst of COVID, and like, vaccinations are starting to come out and things like that, but we're still very much in it, and so it's like, what are we able to do and stuff like that. So how is the chamber kind of looking ahead for this year then?
Well, we're doing pretty well with, luckily, we were able to get some support from the county through CARES to be able to do what we did with the CARES funding. So we have, financially we're doing okay. But, looking forward, we did Glass Quest, which was amazing. Yeah. I know the island was very busy, and I think some people were not, they were a little overwhelmed by the amount of traffic we had going on. But again, it helped businesses, and it helped people. It helped people get out and do the things that they needed to do that they haven't been able to do for a year. Yeah. Mentally, this has been really tough on our community and our world, basically. Yeah. So that was fun. It was a lot of work. Jessica's our Glass Quest queen. She's amazing and did a great job. So that's, Glass Quest was a success, and we're looking forward to next year. Yep. And, generally we have our biz brats and beats, what used to be called beer brats and biz, that we do at Freedom Park. Yep. And we're kind of trying to decide where that's going to go. We're going to make some decisions here in the next couple of days, but it may be something that we do in August, or we may just wait until next year. I'm not sure. Okay. We just kind of have to wait and see where we are with COVID. Yeah. Because you can't really have a festival if you can't have food. Right. And music and, a beer garden and some of the things that people look forward to. Right. Yeah, and I was kind of surprised. Even Stanwell Camano Fair has still not released whether or not they're planning on doing one this year. Yeah. Which I figured by August, it's going to be middle of summer. Everything that you do at the fair is outside. But then it does bring in a lot of people. So it's like kind of balancing all of that. Yeah, it is. And it's just trying to see into the future. And that's not something that, it's something we've been used to doing, because things are sort of guaranteed and you kind of go along your way and it happens. But with this is something none of us have ever encountered. And what do? You just kind of, it's sort of a wait and see. But the problem with having events is that it's a plan. You have to plan ahead of time. Yes. To get musicians, to get vendors, to have, because it's part of it is business, and getting your businesses to have booths set up so that they can share what they do with the community in a comfortable outdoor space. Right. But it's hard to see where that's going to go, and getting sponsorships with businesses that, are struggling financially. I mean, those are all things that, you have to take into consideration. Right. Yeah. No, and obviously then you got to get the marketing and everything out there so people know that it's happening. Right, because it costs money to, to make money and raise funds for, the things that we do for the community.
Right.
And that's, what our events do. I mean,
Yeah.
we're a nonprofit organization that raises money to help with scholarships, help businesses sponsor their events, and do whatever we can to support them as far as, having speakers come in and talk, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And then, go ahead.
I was just going to say that also then we've got Chili Chowder coming up, and that's our biggest fundraiser. And we are really hoping that by November we'll have this, have this kind of locked down and figured out and be able to hold the event.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that that was a really big hit last year with not being able to do that as normally. And
Yeah, it was really frustrating because I think it's something everybody looks forward to.
yeah.
And last year was our 25th year.
Oh.
That's a long time to be doing the same
Yes.
event.
Yeah.
We've kind of got it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. All right. And then, is there anything else as far as how is Puget Sound Tree Care? How is that kind of done with COVID and everything?
Well, it's been interesting. We thought we had no idea. June came around and we were thinking, are people at the phone's going to stop ringing? People are not going to need work. They're going to be staying home, watching their money because the stock market was going crazy.
Right.
And we basically, our guys were off for, I think, 2 weeks. And then our phone went nuts. Everybody was at home. And instead of spending money on food and on travel, they were spending money on the things that they'd neglected at home.
Yeah.
Like trees that needed to be taken down or trimmed up or whatever.
Yeah.
So we got really busy.
Nice.
And it hasn't stopped.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's been good for us. And it's a great business. Jim and I make great partners.
Yeah.
We work well together and have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
We have the same interests,
Yeah.
obviously with trees and the outdoors. And my brother he just retired from the Forest Service, so we had that. He was a scientist for the Forest Service.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little bit of family stuff there. Jim's other side of the family were in the film business, so it's completely opposite. We had the trees, loggers, and then we had producers and music people and stuff. Yeah. So
Very cool.
Yeah. So we have an interesting family, and of course, his whole family lives here except for his brother. His brother lives in LA, but his whole family has congregated onto the island.
Wow.
So we have our own community too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you guys must have been super busy when we had the crazy windstorms and all that.
Yeah. It's kind of a good thing for us, but it's kind of a tough thing too, because you've got customers that you have scheduled work for out, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you have a massive windstorm, and what do? You have to put all those people off and help people. I mean, we had that one windstorm I think it was the first part of January. Was that it? Yeah, the biggest one. We were taking trees off houses and shops and cars, and one tree went through somebody's house where the guy was sitting in his chair and the tree came through his roof.
Oh my word.
Yeah, so it's just trying to get people comfortable and making sure they're okay and safe, and all the customers that had to be put off totally understood.
Yeah.
And just getting out there and getting the work done. But our guys worked hard.
Yeah.
It was long days and long nights and weekends and,
Yeah.
to get that done. But
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had another storm and then another storm. And we kind of look at each other when the wind comes up and it's like, what is going on? It's been a windy year.
Yes.
So that was, so it has been good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And part of working on the island is you get to know everybody.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of customers that have become friends, and it's a good group of people that live here.
Yeah, it is. It's a tight knit community that really cares about each other, and they really care to see this community grow and move forward together. It seems like.
Yeah, it does.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
Well, this is kind of a touchy-feely one, but I bought a air diffuser.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a weird thing, but it's, that you put in on your kitchen counter and you put water in it and you add essential oils to it. And it really helped me through, being able to walk into your house and smell lavender and feel calm.
Right.
Or if you wanted something more invigorating, you added lemongrass or whatever to it. So that was my purchase.
Nice. Yeah, we use those with our kids and stuff like that, especially if they're getting sick or anything like that. Like we have ones for like sickness or like stuffy nose and like they're one of those things that like I didn't really grow up with them, but like my wife did, and they really help like the kids drastically. Like if we forget to do it one night when they've got stuffy noses, like if we use it, like it's totally night and day difference.
It is.
It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's actually helped with my my mental state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here?
Well, I did have friends that came from out of town, and this is what we did. They arrived. They came up from Oregon, and they got here early on a Friday, so it was like 11:30. Jim was working, and so we came down and went and had lunch at Naked City.
Nice.
And then this was 2 years ago, so a year and a half ago. And then we kind of drove around the island, got back, went for a walk through Cama Beach. And then by the time Jim got home, we hopped in the boat and launched it and went out and pulled crab pots.
Nice.
We had set them out the night before.
Yeah.
And came back in and cooked crab and sat on the deck and ate crab and drank wine and watched the sunset.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So that was a day in the life on Camano Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can get crabbing in there, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Nice. All right. So who's an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Well, you've interviewed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot of really interesting podcasts.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's been great to hear all the different stories. I have a few that I'll probably share with you, when we get done with our talk today.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good. And lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard right on Camano Island as you're driving up the hill, what would that say?
I have two.
Okay.
And the first one would be kind, be amazing, and be grateful.
Yep.
And the second one would be don't count the days, but make the days count. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are both really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Susan Fay for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP88. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP88. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.